Right, I have it as 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session in our series of webinars on EU Exit, this one for the general aviation community specifically. My name is Will Nathan, and I'm Head of External Relations here at the UK Civil Aviation Authority. For those of you who are interested, you can access the full list of our webinar series at our dedicated microsite, which you're probably all familiar with now, but in case you're not, the address for that is info.caa.co.uk/EU Exit. Today, over the course of the webinar, we'll be hearing from Steve Horton, Neil Peacock, and Jim Marin on the issues affecting the general aviation community in a no-deal scenario. And then there will be some time at the end for a Q&A from a larger list of panelists that you can see on your screen now. For that Q&A, can I ask that you submit your questions throughout the presentation using the button at the bottom of your screen, as opposed to putting your hands up. And I would encourage you to wait as best you can to submit any questions until towards the end of the presentation, as you'll hopefully find that a lot of your questions are answered throughout the webinar. Now, that there are 1,000 people who have registered for this session today, so it's very unlikely that we're going to be able to answer every question. What we will, though, do is at the end, we'll analyze the questions, pull out the key themes and areas, and address those issues on the microsite I mentioned earlier, which, as I said, you can find at info.caa.co.uk/EU Exit. And finally, just so you're all aware, we will be recording this session and making the slides available afterwards. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Steve Horton, who will talk you through the new regulatory framework you can expect as of 1 January 2021.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to take you through the new regulatory framework. Can I have the first slide, please? Okay, we are currently in a transition period. We formally left the EU on the 31st of January, following the ratification of the withdrawal agreement. And we are now in what is called a transition period, which lasts until the 31st of December. And during this period, the EU agreements and the Aviation Acquis continue to apply here in the UK. Negotiations on a long-term aviation relationship are still continuing, but the UK will no longer participate in the EASA system after the transition period ends in December. Next slide, please. Take you through the European Union Withdrawal Act. Okay, the EU legislation that will form part of the UK domestic law if it is in force and in effect on the 31st of December this year. The whole of the Aviation Acquis will be brought across into UK law under the Withdrawal Act. And you may have heard the term statutory instrument, or SI, and these make the Act operable under in the UK. The substantive requirements, in other words, the technical content of the EU regulations, remain unchanged, and the identity of the regulations, and there's two examples on the screen, they remain unchanged as well. We retain the same identity. Next screen, please. Okay. Looking forward, at the end of the transition period, we will be responsible for our own development of aviation safety policy and regulation. And we, in conjunction with the DfT, are establishing a capability to do this work from the start of 2021. And this will provide an opportunity to improve how we develop policy in the future and to better involve industry in the decision making and develop the rules more flexibly. There will be a published programme. This will be done annually, and it will be derived from a prioritisation of the various demands that exist as we go forward. We are currently developing the programme for 2021, and this will be published towards the end of this year. So the changes for 2021 are likely to contain the completing the implementation of a train of EU regulation, the ICAO SARPs, and any deregulatory measures, and in particular for the general aviation. Next slide, please. And I'll hand over to Neil Peacock.
Good afternoon, everybody. Neil Peacock speaking. Hope you're all well. So we're going to deal a little bit with GA aspects from maintenance airworthiness and licensing. Next slide, please. So one of the most important things is the C of A. So when you see on this slide C of A, restricted C of A, and permit to fly, what we're talking about is existing EASA C of A, restricted C of A, and EASA permit to fly. And the key point is that these are ICAO valid documents, and they will remain in place. So there's no immediate change. In terms of the permit to fly, we're talking specifically about enduring EASA permit to fly aircraft, which is not a huge number in our fleet, but has a concern for some people. So your flight conditions, which are currently approved by EASA, will remain so until such time as they need to change, i.e. through a change of ownership or modification. And in that case, renewal will be through the UK CAA. Next slide, please. So the same kind of message has been happening with the Part MGs and 145 webinars, if you've been involved in those. So this considers airworthiness directives. So primarily, CAP 747 will include mandatory requirements for UK aircraft. EASA ADs issued up to the end of the 31st of December, i.e. the end of the transition period, for all aircraft types will still apply. And then state of design or of the product or the part or appliance ADs issued post 31st of December, so from January 2020, January 21, sorry. So note that the UK will adopt ADs rendered applicable by EASA, and then from the 1st of January, that will be our baseline. But then we'll move on to this 747. So for example, if you get a state of design AD from a Piper or a Cessna aircraft, that will apply automatically unless we decide that we're going to vary it for some reason. Next slide, please. So here we're just going to talk about the approvals that we have within GA, the GA community, which is Part MG, Part MF, KO as we move to KO, and Part 145. So essentially your approval will remain valid as it was granted by the UK as a competent authority, and Steve's already explained the UK law part of that. There is no application process to transfer to a CAA or UK CAA approval. It just remains exactly the same. No change to your approval reference. Your approval certificate will remain the same. The terms of approval are associated with it remain just as valid. The issue really becomes that the UK approval remains recognised for the conduct of maintenance or continued airworthiness for engines and components for UK registered aircraft. And at present, as we understand it, there is no recognition by the EU of a UK issued certificate of release to service or airworthiness review certificate after December 2020. Therefore, you would be unable as a UK company to issue a maintenance release, EASA Form 1 or an ARC on a European registered aircraft. Next slide, please. What do you need to do from the 1st of January 2021? Next slide, please. This is the same for, as has already been said in webinars for 145. If you have the privilege or facility to issue an EASA Form 1, you must change that format to a CAA Form 1 for issuing of components. This change applies to all maintenance organisations, and it must be done immediately, really, or effective from the 1st of January. If you've not planned to introduce this change into your system already, then please do so and make sure your staff are aware. Even in the event an agreement is signed with EASA, it's not anticipated that an EASA Form 1 issued by a UK approved company will be recognised for EU aircraft. Next slide, please. This is an example. It's quite small print, but essentially the format of the Form 1 will remain the same. It just says UK CAA in the top left-hand box, and in the bottom left-hand box, you'll lose the reference to EASA, and it will be a CAA Form 1. And those will be available on our website. Next slide, please. So the other important document that we issue in the UK is the Airworthiness Review Certificate, or the Form 15. In our world, in GA, depending on the size of the aircraft, if it's a Part M aircraft, it would be a 15B that you would issue, and if it's a Part ML aircraft, it would be 15C. This will have to change from the 1st of January 2021 to a UK formatted 15. We also understand that ARC Online will be updated and available from the 1st of January 2021. So that will hopefully be a seamless change for you. If you're a maintenance organisation making an ARC Online application, what comes out the printer at the other end will be a UK version. There's only minor changes to that form, so I've not given you a draft here. Next slide, please. What needs to be approved by the CAA? Next slide, please. So from your point of view as approved organisations, you need to review the work that you're carrying out and the work being carried out on behalf of your organisation. So if you're a CAMO or a KO and you've got contracted maintenance organisations, you should change your exposition and other documentation related to the end of the EU transition period. The key item here, for example, would be the CA Form 1 in lieu of the EASA Form 1, which you've already discussed. Changes to documentation should be made as soon as practicable, and if you've got indirect approval, you can do that through that indirect approval process. If you contract maintenance tasks, so the CAMOs and the KOs amongst you, you need to make sure those organisations carrying out that maintenance on your behalf have control procedures so they can control the use of the appropriate licensed certifying staff for G-registered aeroplanes. Next slide, please. So we could talk for a second on Part 66 independent certifying staff. Next slide, please. So for UK Part 66 licenses, the format remains very much the same. Your license will remain valid just as it does for approved organisations at the moment. And once again, there's no application process to do anything with your license. We're talking about Part 66 licenses, of course, not national. The license will remain unchanged along with the privileges of your license, and the regulation references in your license will remain the same. So it will still look like a European license. The UK issued Part 66 license remains recognised for the certification of maintenance on UK registered aircraft. At present, there is no recognition by the EU or mutual acceptance of a Part 66 license after the 31st of December 2020. Next slide, please. So just a reiteration a little bit, all UK issued Part 66 licenses remain valid from the 1st of January 2021. A new license format is to be introduced at the next renewal or next change, that's in truck. And again, if the outcome, even if an agreement is signed, the UK being able to continue to use UK Part 66 licenses to release EU aircraft is not an anticipated outcome. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we're talking about UK independent certifying staff, of which we've had since Part ML came into operation about 12 applications, 9 of which have been issued and 1 is in progress at the moment. So again, maintenance release, G-registered aircraft only for Part 66. If you have a CAA authorization that allows you to issue ARCs as an independent certifying staff, so that means you've got an authorization with an ML.ICSXX code, you can only then do ARCs on UK registered aircraft. And of course, you must have a valid UK Part 66 license and all the conditions that go with that authorization. Next slide, please. Conversely, the EU independent certifying staff, which may or may not be authorised in other member states, they're affected in such a way that Part 66 licensed staff can continue to issue a CRS for aircraft, for maintenance they do on aircraft. Note, this applies to EU licenses that were in place prior to the 1st of January 2021 for a period of up to 2 years. There is a caveat to that, unless they are either changed or reviewed, from which point the EU licence can no longer be used, and it would have to revert to a UK Part 66 licence. An EU authorised Part 66 independent certifying staff would not be able to issue an ARC for a UK registered aircraft from the 31st of December. This is because within the rule set, you can only issue an ARC for an aircraft which is in a member state, and of course the UK will no longer be a member state. Next slide, please. So just a very short slide on some Part ML and M specific information. So this was to deal with aircraft transfers. It's quite straightforward. Aircraft imported from an EU member state, the UK will continue to accept the aircraft with a valid ARC or C of A, i.e. the same transfer documentation as currently. An aircraft exported from the UK to an EU member state will be considered an import from a third country by the EU, and therefore will require an export C of A to be confirmed by the importing authorities. So if you're importing to one of the European member states, they will determine what you need as a transfer document. And that concludes my slide pack for this afternoon. Thank you very much for listening.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jim Marin. I represent the GA Unit Pilot Training Team. Slide, please. I have a short 10-minute brief on and a dozen slides around the effects of private pilot licenses and flight training. I recognise this is a slightly dry topic, so I do appreciate your patience. So what happens on the 1st of January 2021? Well, hopefully the skies will be clear, there'll be nil wind and excellent visibility, and we can all go flying. However, quite a lot will have changed. So on the 1st of January, EU aircrew regulation will be adopted by the UK as the UK aircrew regulation. So this is a lift and shift. Over the last few months and beyond, the CAA and government have been working very closely on things called statutory instruments to make that happen. So that's all behind the scenes. It's not something the sector needs to worry about, but you do need to be aware that we are lifting and shifting the regulation into UK law. So the good news of that is there's no changes to gain, renew or revalidate a license currently issued under the EASA regulation. But what this does mean is that all UK issued EASA licenses will become UK regulation licenses, and they'll no longer be an EASA license. So we've engaged with ICAO on this, and they have confirmed that there's no need for us to reissue licenses en masse for the 1st of January 2021. So on that day, you will still hold the same physical license. This is really important. It will look the same. It will still have the EASA logos on it. The ratings, validity periods, they will all be the same, but it will have changed from being an EASA license to a UK aircrew regulation license. So while we're talking through this brief then, the changes that we're talking about relate to EU and EASA. So as you know, in the UK, we have two licensing systems. There's the EASA and the EU one, and also those that are regulated under the Air Navigation Order 2016 as national licenses. What we're talking about today is around the EU and EASA, and the national licensing system will run in parallel to that. Slide, please. So a couple of key points to remember going forward as well. On the 1st of January 2021, the UK will become a third country relative to the EU and EASA, and so will our licenses. So when we're chatting going forward, when we're referring to EASA membership and EASA member states, we mean in the context of post the 1st of January, when the UK is not part of that, and we'll be talking about the EASA states that are remaining. Slide, please. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of this then. Let's start with UK and EU acceptance of licenses. So the worst case scenario is on the 1st of January, there's been no mutual recognition between the UK and the EU. If that's the case, the CAA will issue a general validation allowing EASA license holders to fly UK registered aircraft on the G-Reg within their license privileges. And that will remain for a 2-year period of validity of the certificate, and that will apply to ratings, certificates and approvals, etc. in the UK. So that's quite a big deal. So what we're saying there is for this 2-year period, it will be possible for EASA license holders, as they can now, to come and fly UK G-registered aircraft. So we thought it'd be quite helpful to try and work through some examples of how that might impact the GA sector in the real world. And we'll come up with 3, and I'll run through them for you now. So an EASA licensed FI can still work in a UK flying school and train for UK licenses. A UK licensed pilot can go to an EASA member state and be trained at an ATO or a DTO with an EASA approval, and that training would count towards a UK license. Examiners, they're slightly more complicated. So a UK examiner can act for UK license holders without any further action. Slide, please. But if a UK examiner is planning to test for an EASA license holder, they need to go and check first with the state of license issue that will be acceptable. Conversely, an EASA member state examiner can examine for UK licenses, but they must still be designated by the UK CAA, and that would apply initially for the 2-year period. You may have heard a lot of talk of pilots transferring their licenses out from the UK state of license issue transfer with their medical records and license and move. There will be an option from the 1st of January 2021 for those pilots to regain a UK license, and the process for that will be advised shortly and published on the CAA website. There's also some good news. You may recall up till April 2020, it was possible for a national license holder to fly an EASA registered aircraft, an EASA aircraft in the UK, and that was enabled by derogation and exemption, and that's run since about 2014. It is the CAA's intent, with support and agreement of our colleagues at DFT, from the 1st of January to allow national license holders to fly Part 21 aircraft, that's aircraft that were EASA aircraft, within SEP and TMG class rating privileges. So that's introducing something that was available to the sector for quite an extended period of time, but stopped back in April. We hope with the help of DFT to be able to reintroduce that, and we think that's a good news story for GA. Slide, please. Okay, flying in the EU then. Some more good news then. So as you may remember from your air law examination days, the UK is a signatory to the Chicago Convention. So that means a UK national or a UK Part FCL ICAO compliant license holder operating an ICAO compliant UK registered aircraft can fly outside UK airspace and territorial waters. Within reason, that's just about anywhere. And ICAO aspect is being key. Obviously, that's with the normal checks and balances of aviation, border controls and customs. But if a pilot wishes to operate an EU registered aircraft, they could seek a new license from an EASA state or a license validation to the UK license by an EASA member state. If that were to happen, our understanding is that validation would apply in all EASA member states. But to obtain an EASA license on the basis of your UK license, you need to meet the EASA terms and conditions for that, which they will publish, and we understand that's going to happen quite soon. Slide, please. Question that we're getting asked quite regularly is, do GA need to hold an EASA PPL? Well, like most things in licensing, the need is driven largely by personal circumstances. So today, because we've got a large audience, we can only offer general guidance. So we've picked 3 scenarios that we think will be quite relevant to the GA community. So firstly, if you're a UK resident flying a UK registered aircraft, you're based in the UK and you meet the ICAO compliant boxes that we mentioned earlier, and you're going to do some channel hopping around France or Germany or the like, that should be absolutely fine. However, if you're a resident in an EU country and you're flying an aircraft registered in an EU member state, so that's one that isn't the UK because we're talking after the 1st of January, you may wish to consider obtaining a license issued by an EASA member state. And finally, if you want to fly a UK registered aircraft and you hold an EASA license, that's one issued by an EASA member state, and that applies after the 1st of January 2021. After the 2 years acceptance period, you've got two choices then. Either you can hold a UK license or get a UK validation on your EASA license, but you will have to take some action towards the end of that 2-year period for that scenario. And of course, none of that applies to MPPL or UK Part FCL LAPL. Slide, please. Chatted a bit about training, chatted a bit about pilots and licenses. I think it'd be quite helpful just to touch on training organisations, particular ATOs and DTOs. Mentioned at the start of the brief, this is a lift and shift of regulation. So there's no plans to change the regulation relating to ATOs and DTOs in the UK regulatory construct from the 1st of January 2021. However, ATOs and DTOs currently under UK CAA oversight on the 1st of January will no longer hold an EASA approval or a declaration. It will revert automatically to a UK approval or declaration. And like licenses, it's not our intention to issue out lots of new ATO certificates or amend declarations. It will still be the same ATO certificate with the logo on the top. Nothing will have changed on it physically, but its status in law will have changed. And because of that change, that means the training courses offered by UK ATOs and DTOs will be for the issue of a UK license, rating or certificate only. And because the regulation is a lift and shift, this means the course content, the names, the training requirements, the pre-entry requirements, instructors, that will all remain the same. You can deliver that, but it will be towards UK license, rating and certificates only. We appreciate there's organisations out there that may wish to continue training for EASA licenses. They will then have the option to seek a third country ATO approval from EASA direct if they want to train for EASA licenses. But it would be possible to hold a dual approval, so you could apply to EASA and secure a third country ATO approval, and also hold a very similar approval for the same sort of training courses from the UK CAA and run those at the same time. So a dual approval option is possible. Slide, please. Okay, what about the future then over the next few months and early years? So the good news is from day one, 1st January, we will continue to issue licenses such as the MPPL, the LAPL, the IMC rating. We'll just carry on doing that. So in many ways, it is business as usual. But thinking slightly further ahead, topic conversation around the EASA basic instrument rating. That's still being considered, how we would potentially implement that, and no decision has been made. There is an opportunity for the GA sector to help shape some of these decisions for the future. As you may be aware, we've recently published a consultation document seeking the views of the sector around the regulatory structure and other wider issues. So now's your opportunity to engage with that consultation document and help shape the future and inform the views for us to move forward together. Slide, please. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Neil. I hope everyone on the call found that useful. As I said at the beginning, we'll now move into the Q&A section of this. Can I ask all the panelists to make sure they familiarize themselves with the mute button so we don't have any instances of people not answering the questions, or if answering the questions silently. I'll read the questions out and invite our different panelists, our different experts to answer those questions for you. And we'll see where we get to. We've allotted at least half an hour to this, so we've got some good time to get through a lot of your really great questions. The first one I'll direct to Jim Frampton is, will withdrawal from EASA prevent participation in EASA working groups, such as the EASA Electronic Conspicuity Forum?
Hi, Will. Thanks very much. Well, the truth is that since we left the EU on the 31st of January this year, then we have been effectively uninvited to those forums. So we haven't been participating in those for some time. Once we get beyond the current political negotiations and we're able to start to engage again on the technical matters in terms of our aviation relationship with the EU, then we hope that there may be the opportunity again to re-engage as invitees and participants at some of those forums. But for the time being, it's very clear that we will not, for the time being, be invited to those forums.
Great, thanks, Jim. I'll stay with you if that's all right. And a question here about our independence, our newfound independence from the European system from the beginning of next year. How much of an objective is it to remain aligned and in sync with EASA?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Will. Well, the CAA's key concern post-transition is to make sure we have a smoother transition to a post-EASA world for the whole of the GA sector in the UK. So what we'll be doing is aiming to weigh the benefits of continued alignment with the opportunities for divergence from some EASA regulations. And that will be the opportunities that come, and also the ability to manage the risks in a post-EASA and in of course, a COVID world as well at the moment. So we'll be looking to identify those areas where it may be beneficial for the UK to diverge, and we're really keen that our GA stakeholders are part and parcel of that process. So we've got an ongoing consultation process, which is called the post EASA GA challenge consultation. That's going to run. It's open at the moment. It's going to run until the 18th of December, and that's an opportunity for stakeholders to identify areas where they think we can and we should diverge further from EASA. And I know there'll be a lot of focus on things such as reducing where there may be a feeling that there's red tape, or areas where we should remain aligned. So we're really keen to identify the benefits from divergence as perceived by the GA community.
Wonderful, thanks, Jim. I'll give you a break now and move to John Davies, if I may. Will an EU organisation be able to issue a CRS or ARC on a UK registered after the end of the transition period? So that's after 31 December of this year.
This is all still in the negotiations, but at present the answer, unfortunately, is no.
Great, nice and short. John, we'll stay with you. If an FAA AD was not adopted by EASA as of 31 December, will this become applicable to UK registered aircraft from the 1st of January 2021?
No, what we're doing is we're putting a line in the sand as of anything that was adopted before the date is adopted, and anything that wasn't adopted remains unadopted, just to make sure that we don't have any confusion.
Great, thanks, John. Steve Horton now, what will change, if anything, for NREG aircraft based and flying in the UK? So US registered aircraft based and flying in the UK.
This time, nothing's going to change. As it continues, so nothing at the moment.
I'll stay with you, Steve, if that's all right. Will an EU organisation be able to issue a CR? Oh, we've had that one. Forgive me. Steve, given the US GA sector is significantly larger than the UK's GA sector, and in many instances more advanced than the UK EASA, would be informing a much closer link to the US FAA in terms of training, regulation, standards, etc., not be beneficial to the UK industry. So a question there, should we be forming stronger relationships with the US FAA?
Well, at the moment, we're still trying to divorce ourselves from the EU system, and dependent on how the current negotiations continue, or the outcome of those negotiations, then there may still be links into the EU system. We have formed a new UK US bilateral, so there is benefits there. So at the moment, I cannot see a general move towards the US.
And Steve, one more question for you, if I may. What will EASA aircraft, as they are designated at present, be known as post the end of the transition period?
Okay, this is a change to the air navigation order. An EASA type, that, as you know it today, will become a Part 21 aircraft post the 31st, and a non-EASA type becomes a non-Part 21 aircraft post the 31st of December.
Great, thanks, Steve. I'll give you a break and move to Jim Marin, if I may. Here's a good scenario-based question, Jim. A vintage aircraft under UK registration, based in Belgium and maintained by a Belgian camo. Is that aircraft allowed to fly? Are we allowed to fly that aircraft under private use with an EASA license?
Good question. Thanks for that, Will. The answer to that is yes, during the 2-year acceptance period.
Wonderful, thank you. And we'll move back to Jim Frampton, if we may. What will change, if anything, for N-registered aircraft? We've already had a similar question to this based in the UK, so we'll skip over that one and move back to Steve Horton. Sorry about that. When an EASA P2F aircraft becomes due for permit renewal, what form of airworthiness will it move to?
Okay, as I said right at the start, there's no change to the technical content of the regulation. So any aircraft that's currently on an EASA permit to fly, the application's made to the CAA, and we will issue what will be the corresponding Part 21 permit to fly. So it's basically the same process, the same system.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. John Davies, on certification of parts and software, will the CAA accept future EASA approvals, or will the CAA recertify?
I don't think recertify is the right word. There may be a minimal validation process, but we're looking to make that process as smooth as possible.
Great. And another couple of questions for you, John. How does the CAA envisage validation of foreign STCs, such as FAA Avionics AML STCs? Will this be an automatic process by mutual recognition, or will the UK CAA need to investigate the design?
As before, and we're not looking for, I don't think it will be absolutely automatic, but I think that we're looking to make this as easy as possible. There may be some sort of validation.
Great, thank you. And another one for you. What will happen to aircraft who need minor repairs when flying in member EU states? Will there be any ability to use EASA certified mechanics for small repairs?
I think I might have to have a little look at that, and we'll come back to you.
Great, thank you. Back to Steve, if we may. Will UK CAA continue to accept the validity of EASA Form 1s for A, new aircraft parts, and B, maintained parts imported to the UK after the end of the transition period?
Yes, a very simple answer to that, yes, that we will continue to recognise the EASA Form 1, but it will only be up to the end of the 2-year recognition period.
Great, thanks, Steve. Another one for John. For new aircraft from the EU, will the CAA still recognise EASA Form 52s and the current process to gain a C of A to apply?
Yeah, we're not expecting any change in that for the transition period, for the post-transition period, for the 2-year period following when we leave.
And John, this participant's asking if they can assume that all UK registered aircraft will now not be considered EASA aircraft.
Well, that goes back to Steve's point. They'll be considered Part 21 aircraft.
Great, thank you. A question on licensing for Jim Marin and his team. What can PPLs do to retain their EASA license, given the existing EASA license will lapse on the 1st of the 1st next year?
Okay, well, they need to get a move on and transfer out, state of license issue transfer to an EASA state before the 31st of December 2020. So time is short.
Great, thank you. A couple more questions for you, Jim, if I may. What will be the implications for pilots who fly N-registered aircraft in the UK on FAA licenses? 2
words for that, no change.
And what can PPLs do to retain their EASA license, given the existing EASA license? Oh, sorry, we've answered that one. Right, Jim, back to Jim Frampton, if I may. If a national license is to be valid for EASA aircraft from 1st of January, can a national license holder with a PMD fly an EASA aircraft?
Yeah, UK EASA aircraft will become UK Part 21 aircraft, as everybody's already heard, from the 1st of January. And the UK CAA intends to take action once we have left EASA to allow holders of UK national licenses to be able to operate Part 21 aircraft.
I'll stay with you, Jim, if that's all right. Since August, there have been unsubstantiated suggestions that there will be a review of all licensing across GA during 2021 and 2022. Please, can you tell us whether such a review will indeed take place, and if so, when it will start and end, and what its remit is?
Okay, so we recognise that there is scope for simplifying and rationalising licensing in the UK, and there's an opportunity emerging. But as I said earlier, we're running a consultation process to work out what are the immediate priorities for the GA community in the round. And so the feedback that we get from that consultation process will direct us towards what we should focus on in the short term. I anticipate from some of the preliminary work that we've done that rationalisation of licensing will be one of the areas that the community will want us to look at. And if we get that feedback, then we'll certainly take it forwards. It's an immensely complicated subject. We know from the preliminary work that we've done, we've had some good input from some of our stakeholders already. So I think it will take more than a year to complete it, but we're absolutely up for it if the community wants us to take it forward.
Great, thanks, Jim. If we'll move back to Jim Marin now, if a CAA PPL gets an EASA Class 1 medical in 2021 and gets an EASA CPL while keeping a UK PPL, what would they need to do to be able to get a UK CPL privilege?
That'll be under some conversion terms, and they're going to be published in due course.
And I think we've already answered a similar question, but once again, just to confirm, any changes, please, for NREG aircraft and FAA PPL credentials for flights within the UK?
The information I got is no change at the moment.
Great, thank you. Right, Steve Horton, please. What will the new UK regulation be made available on the CAA website so we can view the most current versions online?
Yes, it will be. That is currently in work at the moment to produce a UK version. So I can't say when it'll be available. Yes, but it will be available on the website.
Great, thank you. Another one for Jim Marin. When will a decision on EASA BIR be taken?
Okay, that's one of the first big ticket items post 1st of January 2021, where there's a possible divergence. That's something that could fall out of the consultation. So as we mentioned in the brief, if you've got a view on that and you think it's a good thing or not, get in the consultation and make your views known, and that will help us inform taking the correct course of action to meet the needs of the GA sector.
Great. I think there's another one here for you, Jim, if that's all right. What question bank will be used for UK ATPLs from the 1st of January?
Okay, the information I have is ECQB 2020.
And I'll keep you there. Does the UK intend to continue to issue the LAPL medical?
The LAPL medical, no change on that at the moment. So the intention is to carry on doing that.
And one more, Jim. Is there any chance of UK LAPL holders being able to fly in Europe in the near future?
That's potential, but that would be subject to agreement and negotiation going forward.
Great, thank you. Actually, there's another one here for you, Jim. Will UK version of UK licenses now be known as UK Part FCL?
Yes.
And will there be a path between NPPL, SSEA license and a full UK PPL?
That will be a good thing, we believe, but that will be part of a consultation. So if the sector have a view, opportunity to get in there and help shape it, so we deliver what works for the GA sector.
Thanks, Jim. I'll give you a quick reprieve and move to Steve Horton. Will we be able to fly LAA aircraft in EU states?
It very much depends on the certificate of airworthiness that the aircraft has. If it's got a standard C of A, then it should be no problem. If it hasn't, if it's on a permit or something, then you will need permission to fly in the EU from the state that you're flying in.
Great, thanks, Steve. I'm afraid, Jim Marin, we're going to come back to you. Are there any changes expected to medical certifications, including self-certification?
I think we're going to have to take that one away because I'm not a medical expert on that. So that's something we could put on the microsite.
Okay, great, thank you. And is there any chance of UK LAPL holders being able to fly in Europe in the near future?
Okay, it's quite a common question at the moment. The bottom line is a LAPL is a sub-ICAO license. We've said on the 1st of January, we become a third country relative to the EU and EASA. So it will become a sub-ICAO third country license. That means that will be subject to agreement and permission going forward. So pilots can't just go and do it. That could be a general permission negotiated or on a case-by-case basis. But there is a change there, yes.
Great, thanks. And Jim, this participant holds a LAPL A and flies a UK registered plane. Can they continue to make flights to Europe after the end of the transition period?
Same again, it's subject to agreement going forward, either on a general arrangement or a case-by-case basis.
Great, thank you very much. What is the timescale for deciding on whether CAA will adopt BIR versus IRR?
That would be again steered quite heavily by the consultation and what the GA sector thinks is appropriate, and that's something we can look at once we have the consultation information to help inform our decisions.
Great, thank you. And we'll move back to Jim Frampton for a moment, please. Any news about EGNOS access?
There's no change at this stage, I'm afraid. So until we know otherwise, then we have to assume that we will no longer be able to participate in that process. Hopefully, again, once we get down to the technical discussions, the other side of political agreement, there might be some movement on that. But our assumption at this stage is that we will not be able to participate.
Great, thank you. Chris Street, if I might bring you in, there's a couple of questions here on the EU-UK Aviation Safety Agreement, various different questions about the status of that agreement. Are you able to comment?
So just to introduce myself, I'm Christopher Street from, I'm a solicitor at the Office of General Counsel and have been involved in the negotiations directly with the EU. There are a couple of questions that I've seen on there. In terms of progress on the bilateral EASA with the EU, we have been making every effort to make one. We think it's in quite a good place. However, everything that we do is very much subject to the overall political context. So if we don't hear any movement on fisheries, there won't be any movement on the aviation safety or even aviation transport agreements.
Wonderful, thanks, Chris. Steve Horton, which regulations will the GA community, or the UK GA community, I'm presuming this to be governed by, for example, the ANO? In other words, what air law documentation will the community need to refer to? Will they still need to head to the EASA regulations website?
Okay, the regulation format today, the ANO and the EASA regs, as I said, that's what's coming across. So it'll still be the ANO, but it will be the UK basic regulation and all the implementing regulations below it. So there is, in effect, there is no change as we go forward. And at some point soon, I hope in the short term, you will see the UK regulations published on the CAA's website. So there is no change as we go through the new year into 2021.
Thanks, Steve. A couple more questions for our licensing team. For Jim, if I may, will the introduction of BPL and SPL be deferred?
That's not our intention. They're quite sector specific. If the sector leaders have any concerns or issues, they're welcome to talk to us about it.
And I'll stick with you, Jim. This participant holds a CAA Part FCL LAPL supported by a GP medical certificate. Will this mean that they will only be allowed to fly in UK airspace as P1 after the end of the transition period? If so, is there any likelihood that privileges allowed up to this date be restored during the ongoing negotiations?
Again, that will be subject to agreement going forward, an arrangement between EASA member states and the UK.
Wonderful, thanks, Jim. John, will there be any changes to the applicability of CS STAN and Form 123 for either Part 21 or non-Part 21?
No, CS STAN gets brought over along with everything else, and nothing changes for national aircraft, so the short answer is no.
Wonderful, thank you. And actually, John, we'll stick with you if that's all right. Complex maintenance on sailplanes. Will maintenance performed by a TC holder be recognised even if they have new licenses or approvals after the end of the transition period?
Yeah, a bit complicated, but generally, yes, for a further 2 years.
Okay, great.
The period of recognition, it should be okay.
And one more, John, what is the implication of an aircraft becoming a Part 21 aircraft?
Well, nothing really. Everything stays the same. We're trying to make this, as you can probably tell, as smooth as possible. So there won't really be any change. Your C of A will be, or your permit will be replaced in due course, but there won't be any real differences.
Great, thank you. One for Jim Frampton, if I may. There's a number of EASA proposed amendments in the works to Part NCO, such as MPA 2020-02. Will those be adopted wholesale by the UK, dropped, or looked at individually?
So in simple terms, those that come into force before the 31st of December of this year will come into force in the UK also under UK law at the point at which the whole of EU aviation law is adopted into UK law. Anything which comes into force after that date, then we will look at on a case-by-case basis and make a decision.
Jim, we'll stick with you for the next one as well. Will ECARES be used after December?
Yes, we'll continue to use ECARES, although we don't expect to be able to continue to access the European Central Repository of Records. So we'll be able to maintain our own records through the system, but we won't have access to wider European reporting necessarily.
Great, thank you. Back to Jim Marin, if I may. Will the UK participate in a similar basic IR rating as proposed by EASA?
That's a very similar question again. Out for consultation, get your views in there, and if the GA sector think that's a good thing, then that would seem a logical thing to progress.
And will UK CAA issued EASA licenses, which are valid for life, be reissued at any point in the future?
In the short term, the answer to that was no. It's the same license. That's something that's being considered, and there may be some obligations to do that going forward.
Great, thanks, Jim. Back to Steve. Quick question. Regarding permit to fly permissions, can you confirm the current ECAC letters of agreement will still apply?
Yeah, the current ECAC conditions will still apply.
And another one, Steve, to clarify, aircraft with an LAA permit to fly will not be able to fly in Europe from the 1st of the 1st, 2021 without permission from the states they plan to fly in. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Actually, another one for you, Steve. Will new type certificate amendments, and EASA STC be recognized by the CAA after the end of the transition period?
It depends on the negotiations, and because the outcome of those will dictate what is recognised and what isn't recognised. But basically, if you take the high level TC, then there will be a need for the CAA to check, validate, and potentially issue its own TC. But it's dependent on the outcome of the negotiations.
Thanks, Steve. Another couple for Jim Marin, if I may. So have we licensed the ECQB from EASA?
That's a question for our colleagues in other parts of the organisation, but we know we don't need to slightly answer a different question. Is in terms of PPL, no, we own the question bank for that, so that's unaffected, but we need to go back around the commercial exam, TK exams.
Thanks, Jim. And another one for you. Can I hire a GA aircraft in an EASA country with a UK PPL, or will I require an EASA license conversion for this to occur?
So going the other way, if you hold a UK license and you want to fly an EASA aircraft in an EASA member state, that's something that you need to have validated or agreed by the EASA member state.
And another similar one for you, Jim. Will holders of a UK lifetime license with a Class 2 medical be able to fly an EU aircraft with the scope of that license?
That goes back to the idea that we can let UK national licence holders operate Part 21 aircraft in the UK. That's our intent, but that requires our DFT colleague support. We think it's really important, and it's something that we're keen to push forward to enable that to happen.
Thanks, Jim. Chris Street, if I may come back to you, a question on bilaterals. Is there a potential for looking at doing simplified validations between other TCOs, which are ICAO members whom the UK has trade agreements with, e.g. a simpler validation to Canadian licenses?
We would love to do something along those lines, but we've been in, first of all, our first priority has been to try to get everything more or less the status quo with our bilateral arrangements. And then we will look to further that as it develops, and also try and help you guys out by finding places where it will be beneficial for the industry to do a bilateral deal. So, and we're open to ideas. Okay.
Thanks, Chris. Back to John Davies. What will be the effect of the end of the transition period on the 600 kilogram discussions?
Yeah, sorry, on mute. They'll carry on, we think. I can't see there'll be any change to that.
And Jim Marin, can non-UK EASA LAPLs fly here and across our airspace in non-UK registered aircraft, for instance, to Ireland or from Ireland to Belgium, despite having non-ICAO licenses?
Okay, so we're talking about a LAPL issued by an EASA member state with flying UK and going into Ireland. I see no change to the current arrangements for that, but that would be up to the state of registry and the license issue state to confirm that.
Great. Thank you very much, Jim. We'll stick with you, sorry, before you disappear. If the BIR was to be implemented in the UK, would the privileges be valid if flying a UK registered aircraft in an EASA state?
That's something that I can't answer here today. It's a good question. We shall take that away and chew that over and put it on the microsite.
Great. And another one, this participant holds an EASA, a Spanish ATPL with IRE, FE, CPL and FIE, and also has a UK CPL IR. I'm assuming the question is whether that's okay to operate.
Okay, I'll answer that generally because I think there's a bit missing there. We've said for the 2-year period post 1st January 2021, within the license privileges and rating, the holder of a EASA license issued by an EASA member state is welcome to come and fly GE registered aircraft in the UK within their license privileges. I think that was that question might relate to.
Great, thanks, Jim. And another one, if someone holds a UK PPL and EASA CPL, would they require 2 annual type rating proficiency checks, 1 for each license per year, or would 1 proficiency check per type suffice on both licenses?
That's another very specific question, and I will have to take that one away.
Great, thank you. And can privileges of a UK PPL IR be fully exercised on G-registered aircraft in the EU going forward?
That goes down to the ICAO compliance that we talked about earlier on. So provided it's an ICAO compliant license and rating, ICAO compliant registered, that's got international recognition. So that would be yes.
Great, thank you. Jim, we'll give you a bit of a break and move to Steve Horton, if that's okay. Is an SPL sub ICAO compliant?
SPL, I would think you're going off track with what my understanding. I think that's a question for Jim.
Okay, Jim, do you want to comment on that? If not, we'll move on. Nope. All right. John, we'll take 2 more questions given the time allowed. But John Davies, there is a significant amendment to EASA CS stand due in the spring to the benefit of many GA aircraft operators. I think we've already answered this one, but just once again, has consideration been given to the amendment being adopted in the UK?
Well, this is part of a discussion that's going on at the moment with this and the new requirements for GA production design organisations under the auspices of Part 21 Light. We're definitely looking to bring in any alleviations we can for this sector.
Great, thank you. And if we'll take one last question for Jim Frampton, if that's all right, but who is the best person to speak to in the CAA regarding UK license transferring to EASA, but also needing UK?
Well, if you want expert advice about specific circumstances, then if you contact their shared service centre's help desk, then they will be able to start you off on the right track. But in the round, in terms of the questions being asked, then really I think what we're being asked is how is the best way to go about holding both an EASA and a UK licence? And it will depend on your personal circumstances. We're still waiting for clarity, but we anticipate that if you transfer from the UK to EASA, or you seek an EASA license after the 1st of January, so you could continue to hold a UK license and seek an EASA license, we think it is likely that EASA will initially require you to complete not only a competence test, but all the TK exams as well. If you transfer to EASA before the end of this year, then you'll transfer as an EASA member state under the DOC 155 process, and therefore those requirements wouldn't be required. So if you want to end up in the next year holding both licenses, it may be simpler to transfer before the end of this year to EASA and then apply for a UK license on the basis of the EASA competencies that you hold in the new year. Clearly, until we have left, you can't hold both licenses.
Great, thank you, Jim. And can I thank all our panelists today, Steve, Neil, and Jim, for running us through the presentation, as well as all of those colleagues across the CAA who have answered questions today. We've covered what I hope you'll all agree is a wide breadth of different subjects, and I hope it's helped you prepare for the end of the transition period, regardless of the outcome of the negotiations. As I said at the top of this call, we have recorded this session, and we will be in due course making it available both on our microsite and on our YouTube page. And And I can't emphasize enough the value of the microsite for helping you all prepare for life outside the European system. Just a reminder, the address is info.caa.co.uk/EU Exit. And may I wish you all a wonderful Thursday afternoon.